So I told you that, you can have so many processors. You can have these processors in parallel. They can have their own memory. They can either share a common memory. They can also have a distributed memory. That means each processor can have its own memory, and that memory is not only for that processor but can be used by all the other processors. So an elaborate mechanism of storage can be thought about. So there are many kind of architectures that we see which are kind of depending upon either shared or distributed. So Intel and AMD, Intel Core Duo and AMD Auto Opteron and Sunfire E25K, which is symmetric multiprocessor, follow shared memory. IBM and other cluster kind of devices, clusters use the distributed memory applications. Now I also told you that we need to have a kind of a parallel architecture model wherein we should be able to allow different configurations, different architectures to work in cohesion. Now I'll give you a simple example. See, suppose I am in computer lab 1, we are having all Pentium machines. But in computer lab 3, we have all AMD machines. Now, with sitting in the same campus, if we want to make a cluster or a grid or a supercomputer or a high performance computer, we need all of them to be seamlessly integrated together. A cloud, we know about the cloud, right? Cloud is anything and everything can be part of a cloud. It's a thin client. It doesn't matter what the configuration of the thin client is. It can be an Intel machine, it can be a Sun Microsystems box, it can be a Solaris machine, it can be an IBM machine, a Pentium machine, it can be an AMD machine. It really doesn't matter. But we need a parallel architecture model that will be able to integrate as many different architectures as possible, which we call by what is known as a CTA, a candidate type architecture. Any architecture should be able to seamlessly plug in, provided we give the interface, we give the middleware, we give the protocol by which they become parallelized and so on. So that's the general logic of having any parallel architecture model. We need to have the model in such a way that we should be able to easily integrate any kind of architecture. And this CTA or candidate type architecture, this is a simplistic example. P0 can be a different configuration, P1 can be different configuration, P2 can be different configuration, P3 can be different configuration, and all of them are connected together. They can have the same memory, they can share the memory, they can each have distributed memory, it doesn't matter. And when we say a node is there, it not only includes the processor, it could also include the memory which is associated with that processor, the local memory, the cache memory, and a network interface card by which it is connected to this network. So whenever we say it's a node, these three things will be there. Some low amount of local memory will be there, a network interface card will be there to connect to the network, and a processor will be there. I also told you that for a CTA or a candidate type architecture, we need to also, every CTA will have a lambda value, which is a latency value. A latency is a measure of delay. And large latency is always not preferred, but then sometimes it happens. Why this latency is happening is because when you are parallelizing, you will have some sort of overhead. You cannot see, suppose you have M processors, the time for completion of the task will not be the time divided by M. It will not happen like that. When you have M processors, P0 to PM, there is a lot of overhead that will be there. There is a lot of sequential things that are needed. I told you the example, roots of a quadratic equation. You can have one processor check for equal roots. You can have one processor check for imaginary roots. You can have one processor looking for real roots. But to calculate that discriminant, that is b square minus 4ac, you need the a, b and c. The a, b and c are sequential. They have to be given to each processor to check for d equal to 0, d greater than 0, d less than 0. So certain things cannot be serialized, cannot be parallelized. Certain things will always be serial. Certain things you can parallelize. So that overhead will always be there, right? And also these processors need to talk to each other. They need to collaborate with each other. They need to have storage. They need to agree upon things. All these things will take memory, and that memory, that time lag is, you can say, is called the lambda value or the latency value. So this is what I covered in the last class. I also told you about the basic RAM machine, the random access machine, which has random access memory. We have so many RAM machines and we try to use them in parallel. We try to make a parallel random access machine. This is with unlimited number of processors. Now today we are going to look at how the memory can be utilized, how we can access the memory. Now ideally there are several methods. One method is having a shared memory. All the processors have access to a global address space, and all the data is in the global space. Everything is stored there. Now your processor may have a cache to, you know what is a cache? It's like a temporary address book, but everything is stored in the global space. Whether it is remote data or local data, everything is stored there. And there is a cache which is like an address book. Okay, I want to access this. That address book or the cache will give that address book. And every computer, every processor's cache should be always synchronized to the global address space. Meaning everything and anything is stored in the global space. But every processor will have a cache like an address book, and that address book is always updated for every processor. So it is like, you know, I'm just giving you an example. When I open my computer, every day I open my Amrita Mail, my Gmail, my intranet account to, you know, to look at the attendance. So in my cache, these three entries will be there always. Amrita Mail IP address. This is not a correct example, but I'm just giving you the concept of a cache. The Amrita Mail address will be there, space will be there, where it is mapping to which IP address. The Gmail will be there, the intranet IP address will be there. Similar is the cache will also be like that. The cache memory will have all the frequently used address locations. Now there is another way. You have distributed memory. Memory is partitioned, and a partition is associated with an individual processor, meaning that partition will be used by the processor, and there will be storage. Everything is with that partition of the memory. But then you also need to understand that even though one processor will have a partition, it may need data from the other processor, other processors partition. So then you need to have messages of sending and receiving. So here there is no global address space. Each processor has got its partition, and that memory partition is used by that processor. Having said that, if this processor wants to use the memory partition of another processor, it will send a message. It will send a send and receive message. So this is the general process that we see. And finally, we have a one-sided or a hybrid mechanism where both are there. There is also a global address space which is shared, and the caches need not be always synchronized, but then they can. There is also some local space where the processors may ask each other for data through get and put. You know, get and put is like printf and scanf. You know that in C++. So in distributed computing, parallel computing, we need to consider how the data is accessed, the data reuse and the data locality, right? Where the data is available, whether it is in the cache, whether it is in the hard disk or not. Now, same example I am going back. Every day I open my computer, I told you the sequence: Amrita Mail, Gmail, intranet. This is my sequence. 30 days out of 30 days in a month, 29 days, this will be my schedule. Maybe one day I may not check the Amrita Mail. I have a conference keynote. I have to prepare for a seminar or something. I may not even check my mail, and I may directly go to some google.com and look for some slides and stuff like that. But by and large, that locality of data is there. So permanently in my cache, I should be having the Gmail, the Amrita Mail, and the google.com and the intranet link. So these kind of things, how to reuse the data, where the locality of the data are also important aspects that we need to consider when we are having the cache. Now in the cache, normally I told you the cache will be having all the address of all the locations that you are frequently using. But please understand, today I did not check my Amrita Mail. I did not check my Gmail. I did not check my intranet AUMS area. I have an important meeting in the afternoon. I need to prepare. Then I am Googling website after website. My cache, today whole day I am doing it. Afternoon I shut down the computer. Again I check. Afternoon also I don't check the mail. I just go on Googling and finding. So my cache will not be, probably will be, will lose the address of the Gmail, the intranet, and the Amrita Mail. The next day I again open the Amrita Mail. The cache gets, what should I say? The cache gets re-entry of the those mails will be there. So it is a very subtle way where the cache has to be kept as frequently used memory locations. Popularly used memory locations will always be there in the cache. But sometimes the pattern changes. When that pattern changes, that is known as a cache miss. Even though I am always using Gmail, it's not taking from the cache, it is going to the net and taking, it's a long time it is taking because there was a change. That is a cache miss. When I enter Gmail, immediately I get it. That means it has taken the location from the cache. It has not gone to the main memory. So many a time there is a cache hit and a cache miss. And for every entry, the cache, there is a general, every computer has a different system. But for every architecture, there will be some simple logic by which how many bytes will be there in an entry, how many machine words, the line size, the capacity of the cache, and the associativity, how an address is mapped, how the cache memory is mapped to the main memory. This associativity also varies from architecture to architecture. And why is it good to have different parallel architectures or CTAs or candidate type architecture? The answer is very simple. Some may be better suited for specific application domain. Some may be suited for a particular community. Cost is there. Exploring new ideas, using different models, different platforms, different features, different architectures. All these are possible as a result of having different parallel architectures. And many of the supercomputers or the high performance computers, so as to speak, have this kind of heterogeneity. Sometimes homogeneity helps, like we saw in Fugaku. It is a homogeneous system with all ARM processors, but some cases it may be also advantageous to have heterogeneous architectures, different architectures forming part of a parallel computer. Now, I don't know if you know of something called a grid computer. There are many research agencies forming a grid computer. One example is there is a US body called SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. You know, this is the government agency that looks for alien signals and all. I don't know if you have watched a movie called Contact. It's a little old movie, probably 15 years old, Jodie Foster movie, Contact, where they are actually showing the inner workings of SETI. So SETI is searching for signals from the other galaxies and other planets and stuff like that, and they use a massive grid computer. So if your university wants to be part of the SETI initiative, you just need to hook on your computers, which may be of totally different configurations, into that grid. So this grid computer, maybe grid is like a super cloud, okay, or a super cluster. This grid computer is like a super cluster or a super what should I say, a super cluster or a super cloud. This grid, obviously we need to have different parallel architectures. If Stanford University may add 100 computers to the SETI, they may be all of different configurations, but it doesn't matter. It can be of different configurations, and they can easily be seamlessly connected to that grid, which is like a kind of a super cloud or a super cluster. I will close for today. Now we'll meet on Monday. Tuesday, we will have a quiz. So what I covered today will not be there in the quiz. What I covered till the lambda, that till that CTA or candidate type architecture, what I covered today, the memory part, the shared memory thing will not be there in the quiz. So we are going very fast. I would think that perhaps by 10th or 15th of September, I can completely leave you free. I think so. The way we are going, we may need another 7 or 8 classes to finish it off. That's all from my side. I'll close for today, and we will. Let me just. I see 44. That means one person is absent. I have to take attendance. Okay, answer your attendance. Abhilash, Akash, Amit.